Hi, I'm Darrell Mullis, a U.S. citizen and resident of Colorado. And like many other Americans, I've been concerned about the U.S. federal budget, the deficit, and the national debt that our national leaders have been discussing so much in the last few months. I think one of the problems is that most of us as U.S. citizens don't really understand the budget. I'm doing this short presentation so that anyone can understand the U.S. federal budget, including how much money do we collect, where does that money come from, how much money are we going to spend, where are we going to spend it, what is the deficit, and what is the national debt. I hope that after the presentation you'll be able to have discussions with your friends, family, colleagues, and even our national leaders that will help all of us understand how we can meet the current challenges with our federal budget situation. Let's begin here at the flip chart. And what I'd like to begin with is how much are we planning to spend? This is the 2012 U.S. federal budget that was submitted by President Obama to Congress, and in that President Obama says we're going to spend $3,730 billion, and add that to make that into 3 trillion. You have to add 9 more zeros to it. So $3,730 billion is what we're going to spend in 2012. How much will we collect? We're going to collect $2,630 billion. You can see those are very big numbers. Now, you can see also that we're going to collect quite a bit less than we plan to spend. So that difference is $1,100 billion, which of course is the national deficit for the 2012 year. Now the total national debt as of approximately the middle of November 2011 is $15 trillion. That's the total debt that our government has borrowed. Now, let's go next to the sources of revenue. Where are we going to get money from, and how much are we going to get from each source? I have listed here the sources of revenue for the federal government. They include individual income taxes, corporate income taxes, Social Security, which is the payroll taxes taken out of our paycheck, and Medicare taxes. And as most of you know, the dollars that are taken out of our checks are actually matched by our companies. Our companies also pay unemployment taxes, and then there's a few other categories like excise taxes, estate and gift taxes, customs duties, Federal Reserve Bank fees, and a few miscellaneous categories. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the amounts of these as a percentage of the total. We know the total we're going to collect is $2.63 trillion, but think of this as for every $100 we collect, how much comes from each one of these sources. You might want to stop this presentation now if you'd like to guess at what you believe these numbers are, and then I'm going to give you the answers. Okay, individual income taxes provide $43.50 out of every $100 we collect, or 43.5%. Corporate taxes, corporate income taxes, provide $12.50 or 12.5%. Social Security payroll taxes provide 25% or 25 out of every $100. Medicare taxes, $7.70 out of every $100 or 7.7%. Unemployment taxes are 2.2 $2.20 out of every $100. And all of these others provide $9.10 out of every $100. This adds up to 100%. If you want to know the actual dollar amounts for each one of these, just multiply the percent, 43.5%, times 2.63 trillion, and you'll get the actual dollar amount. So those are the sources of revenue. Take this page off. And now let's look at where we're going to spend the money. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to spend $3.73 trillion. And here are the areas in which we're going to spend it. Social Security, health care, which includes Medicare, Medicaid, and a few miscellaneous items. Welfare and income security, which is food stamps, housing assistance, earned income credit, federal unemployment benefits, and aid to dependent families. We also have another major item called the national defense, our military spending. We have to pay interest on the national debt. And then the rest of this is all the government departments, such as the White House, Congress, the State Department, the Justice Department, Transportation, NASA, the Interior Department, all of the government agencies. And so once again, if you want to guess what these numbers are, stop the presentation, fill in your numbers, and then I'm going to give you the answers. Social Security. $20 out of every $100 we spend is spent on Social Security. Health care, we're going to spend $22.60, 22.6% of every $100. Welfare and income security, 14.5% or $14.50 out of every $100. The national defense costs us $19.30 out of every $100 goes to national defense. We pay $6.30 out of every $100 to cover interest on the national debt. All of the government departments or everything else basically costs us $17.30 out of every $100, which again, all of this adds up to 100% of that $3.73 trillion. And once again, if you want to know the actual numbers, just multiply 20% times 3.73 trillion. Okay, that's where the outlays are. Now I'd like to point out some things that we call interesting discoveries, things we discovered in looking at these numbers. We hope that you'll look at them and see what interesting discoveries you make by looking at the numbers. Let's first look at the outlays minus the revenue, which again, 3.73 trillion minus 2.63 trillion gives us a deficit of 1.1 trillion. If you divide the revenue into the outlays, or 2.63 into 3.73, that gives you 1.42, which means that for every $100 that we receive, we're going to spend $142. Think about it, your house. Imagine that for every $100 you received in wages, your family spent $142. And how fast your household would get into trouble doing that. The next interesting discovery, we looked at Medicare collections. If you look here, it says that we collect from Medicare 7.7%, which if you multiply that by 2.63 trillion, we're going to collect 201 billion in Medicare taxes. Now, healthcare, Medicare and Medicaid outlays are 22.6% of our outlays, which again is 22.6% of 3.73 trillion, or we're going to spend $843 billion. So you can see we're collecting $201 billion, spending $843 billion, which means we're going to spend 4.2 times what we collect. Healthcare costs are grossly underfunded. Finally, if you look at the sources of revenue and you add up individual and corporate taxes, Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment taxes, these are all of the things associated with people having jobs or companies. So if you add all those up, they all add up to 91%. 91% of the revenue collected is related to jobs and companies. Now, 91% of 2.63 trillion is $2.4 trillion. So we're collecting $2.4 trillion related to people having jobs or companies. Now, the interesting thing is we spend only 2.8 cents, a little less than 3 cents out of every dollar of outlay for education and job training. That's the total amount, less than 3%, even though it yields 91% when people have jobs and companies. So these were some of the interesting discoveries we made looking at these numbers. Please have discussions among yourselves. As I said, your friends. Hopefully we can speak to our government officials as well, and all of us together can figure out a way to support our country in getting through the current budget crisis. Thank you.